I wanted to start off by your first having you describe to our listeners your background and your research agenda and how that led you to write the book, The Story of the Human Body.
So I'm a sort of a cross between a anthropologist and a sort of experimental biologist. I study the human evolution. I'm interested in how and why our bodies are the way they are. But I'm especially interested in the evolution of human physical activity and how that relates to health and disease. And I guess over the years, my interests have evolved, and I was originally more focused on basically what happened in human evolution. But as my research career went on, I got more and more interested in why anybody should care about it. Partly because of teaching, because I teach my students all about famous discoveries and important changes that occurred in human evolution, and a lot of them dutifully learn it. But when we get to issues like diabetes and heart disease and cancer and osteoporosis and arthritis, they perk up for good reason, because most of them aren't going to become paleontologists, but
right.
Everybody has to deal with these issues. And so over the years I became more interested in why anybody should really care about human evolution in the first place, and that led to the book The Story of the Human Body, which was my attempt to sort of answer that question both to myself but also to readers.
Right, and I highly recommend the book to the listeners, and I finished the last chapter today, and you go from hunter-gatherers and, as you say, the explanation of why our bodies the way that they are 6 million years ago all the way through to modern times, and some of the cultural evolution that has happened with feedback loops and all the interesting things like shoes and eyeglasses and chairs that create these negative feedback loops. And I found all of it very interesting. For instance, things like wisdom teeth and why we need to get our wisdom teeth taken out, and all of it's in there. That one in particular, I wonder if you can expand on that one a little, because I think it would be interesting to some of the listeners.
Well, so impacted wisdom teeth are an example of mismatch, right? So a mismatch is when there is when the way in which our bodies evolved and adapted are not well suited to the modern world, right? Where we're inadequately adapted to modern novel environments. And so wisdom teeth are sort of a nice example of that, but with an interesting twist, which I'll get to. But your teeth are very heritable in terms of how their size. So pretty much determined by the size by genes. But your jaw size, like your jaws are bones, right?
Right.
And like every other bone in the human body is influenced by how you use it. And every time you chew food, you generate forces, which generate stresses, which generate strains, which affect how your jaw grows. And human jaws have gotten smaller over the last few thousand years as we eat more processed foods. Our food is ground and cooked and mashed and Cuisinarted and all kinds of other stuff. That means that we spend much less time chewing today than we used to.
Right.
And the result is our jaws don't grow as much, but our teeth are still the same size, so we're more likely to have crowding. And that said, so about 25% of us now do actually need our wisdom teeth removed. That said, the fear of this has become a bit of an industry among orthodontists who remove a lot of wisdom teeth that probably actually don't need to be removed. So if you do have dental crowding, you should get them removed.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I had mine.
But not everybody actually needs them removed who's told that they need them removed. But that's another story.
Yeah. I found that in the book, there's many things like that, and then I had to get mine removed as an adult, and I chose to do it without any anesthesia or anything, and I could literally feel my jaw breaking when he pulled them out. It was a pretty
wow, do that. Anesthesia is a good thing.
Yeah, I was nervous a little bit about anesthesia. I don't know why, I can't remember, but I could literally feel. I mean, you literally feel your jaw break.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
the first anesthesia, the first surgery done with anesthesia was done right across the river from my office here. At Massachusetts General Hospital.
MGH.
I still see the room.
Yeah. So in your chapter, and the reason why I wanted to talk to you today is to, talk about running, or the evolution of bipedalism, which I think is your chapter 2. I think many of our listeners will find that very interesting. So can you describe that, how bipedalism evolved, and then running?
Well, we still don't know exactly how bipedalism evolved, but it looks like the very earliest fossils of creatures that are more closely related to us than to chimpanzees, we call them hominins. The very oldest hominins that we have appear to have been bipeds. But they evolved probably for walking, not for running. And sort of the best guess as to why that occurred is because this is a period of major climate change in Africa, well, everywhere around the planet. But in Africa, where our ancestors lived, the forests were sort of breaking up, and there was more woodland and more kind of open habitats. And our ancestors, who probably relied primarily on fruits, had to basically travel farther to get food. But, our ancestors were probably very much like chimpanzees. They knuckle walked, and we know from various experiments that knuckle walking is extremely costly. It costs a chimp more than twice as much energy per unit mass, per unit distance to walk as a human, and over long distances, that those calories really add up. So it looks like, whereas bipeds save energy, but probably also were still able to climb trees. So it looks like our first ancestors essentially became upright in order to save energy. And so that's the good news. The bad news is it made us slow. As soon as you become a biped, you're half as slow as a quadruped.
Right.
You generate power with only 2 legs instead of 4. And so when that happened, it set the stage for selection that occurred later on, around sometime between 2 and 3 million years ago, as there was further environmental change in Africa and habitats started opening. It set the stage for the evolution of endurance running, which enabled us to become hunters.
I remember you saying that humans run 28 miles an hour at our fastest if you're Usain Bolt, but a quadruped, a squirrel, a small quadruped will run faster than that.
That's correct. So the very fastest humans are they're faster compared to most of us, but they're not fast compared to most serious animals out there. So if Usain Bolt or any other sort of major sprinter wanted to try to get dinner, or for that matter avoid being somebody else's dinner, by sprinting, he'd be toast. You just can't outrun, quadrupeds like gazelle and deer, lions and cheetah and saber-toothed tigers. That's not going to happen. But what we do excel at is at long-distance endurance running, where we can outlast them over long distance.